our HOD, Dr. S. Manikandan, to introduce the second speaker of the day, Dr. Sunitha. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Prasanna. Thank you, Speaker Madam, and it was a wonderful presentation. And we pray Almighty God to give you health, Madam, health, and we definitely pray get sooner recovery, Madam. Kumari Sunitha, she teaches at Madras Christian College. She is an assistant professor, the Department of Philosophy, Madras Christian College, Chennai. She completed her postdoctoral research on a topic, time and history in Heidegger's philosophy from the University of Madras. She received a PhD for her thesis entitled A Critical Comparative Study of Heideggerian and Sartrean View of a Man, World and Society from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, JNU, New Delhi. She is a recipient of Nehru Fellowship from a Nehru Memorial Fund, and she is also a General Fellow and General Fellowship of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, ICPR, New Delhi. She was a co-investigator of the research project titled Ethical, Legal and Medical Implications of Surrogacy in Tamil Nadu, funded by United Board of Christian Higher Education in South Asia. She is the author of a book, Autonomy of Alienation, a critical study of Heidegger and Sartre. She has published more than 15 research papers in national and international journals. The publication includes Sartre and Alienation, the Marxian Perspectives, the Heidegger's Hermeneutics, a metaplay of polysomous language, gender and globalization, making of universal women, gender and empowerment, equality, equity, decision making, Heidegger, degradation of art, to name a few. Her research interest includes continental philosophy, philosophy of science, philosophy of gender studies, philosophy of language, critical theory, and the philosophy of education and intercultural philosophy. We welcome you, Madam, with this short curriculum vitae. Thank you for honoring our invitation. And Sunitha Madam is also a very good friend of our department, and we have been collaborating with the MCC College. A lot of academic things have been happening with both the department. And thank you, Madam. Thank you for being with us. Now over to you, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Manikandan. And good morning, one and all present here. At first, I express my sincere gratitude to ICPR and Agurchand Jain College for organizing this lecture series, and Professor Dr. Manikandan, Head of the Department of Philosophy, Agurchand Jain College, for inviting me for the program on Indian Philosophers Day lecture series. I also thank Dr. Prasanna Kumar, who is instrumental to my presence here. Today I will be speaking on the topic entitled Concept of Moksha, a bird's eye view. Understanding the audience, and I was reminded by Dr. Prasanna Kumar many times that it is meant for undergraduate students. I tried to make this topic as simple as possible. Unstable net connection, almost 5-6 students are, kids are using net connection. Google classes are going on. I will switch on my, stop my video because it's difficult to continue. Twice I got disconnected from, Srigala ma'am's talk. And also, it was a wonderful talk, ma'am. As I mentioned, the topic of the day is the concept of moksha, or moksha or liberation in Indian tradition. Liberation or moksha is a view of life, so as to speak, a way of life. Indian philosophy has arisen out of practical needs of life to find a way or remedy for the miseries or ills of the world. Moksha means the liberation or release from the cycle of death and rebirth or samsara. Most of the schools emphasized moksha or liberation as a perfect stage. We have to undergo a course of action or discipline in order to attain this. The means to attain moksha varies from system to system. Each school has its own view on moksha. There is no most of the schools, moksha is not an otherworldly ideal alone in Indian system. Let me start with Upanishadic perspective on moksha. Next slide, please. In Upanishads, Turiya, the final embracing goal of spiritual life, is sometimes conceived as a stage of knowledge and sometimes as a stage of liberation. To attain Turiya, it requires a very high level of spiritual development brought about by self-discipline. In this stage, the sage or seer realizes the identity between Atman and Brahman. Moksha or Turiya, not only a freedom from all imperfection and limitations, but also from birth and death. According to Upanishads, evil is the result of metaphysical error. The metaphysical error is the belief that there are multiple realities or many realities. The consciousness of finiteness and distinctness of self is the basis of all evil. This is ahankara. This makes one selfish. When ahankara is transcended through the realization of identity between Atman and Brahman, a condition of perfect bliss is attained. This can be attained in the stage of moksha. Jnana next slide, please. In Upanishads, moksha has two stages: vairagya, cultivation of detachment, and jnana, acquisition of knowledge. Vairagya stands for the particular attitude of the mind towards the world. It means successful eradication of narrow, selfish interest. Vairagya purifies the mind and makes it ready for receiving higher knowledge. The second stage of discipline is acquisition of knowledge. Since evil is due to the misconception of the nature of the ultimate reality, its removal can only be possible through knowledge. Acquisition of right knowledge means a long course of training through 3 stages, that is Stravana, Manana, and Dhyana. Stravana is a formal study and it stands for the study of the Upanishads from a proper guru. Manana stands for the continued reflection on what teacher has taught. This stage emphasizes the importance of reasoning. Next slide, please. The third stage is conviction alone is not intellectually enough. What has been taught by the guru should be meditated upon. This helps one have a direct experience of the Upanishadic truth, which destroys all doubts regarding the absolute truth and removes the belief in many truths. Continued meditation or nididhyasana is possible only after much discipline and concentration of thought, which is the stage in which one gets the realization of identity between Atman and Brahman. This condition is moksha. Moksha, says Upanishads, may be attained either during the course of one's own life or at the moment of death. Moksha attained while still alive is Jivan Mukti, and moksha attained after death is Videha Mukti. The concept of Jivan Mukti implies that man should work for perfection. Jivan Mukti implies a state of eternal bliss by leading life of action. A Jivan Mukta sees the world in all its multiplicity, but he knows that it is not absolute reality. He is no way influenced by the evils of life or universe. He experiences bliss, always the path towards the truth. The Upanishads sometimes refer to karma mukti. This is moksha attained gradually through many lives, even if he is not aware of Upanishadic teaching. Thus, to experience moksha or turiya is to become a knower of Brahman, to be liberated from every finite bond, in short, to realize God. We have already seen that the purpose of life should be break down the barriers of the ego to realize Brahman, the innermost self in all beings, and that the means to attain this end is to see the oneself revealed in all, and to love all equally. The inner life of a man must possess perfect tranquility. That is complete freedom from passion and passionate desires. The tranquility requires the practice of self-control. Next slide, please. Let me move on to Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is considered as a handbook of practical living as well as guide to spiritual attainment. There are paths leading towards the spiritual paths are known as yoga. The word yoga literally means union. Again, the word yoga defines the method by which man's union with God is made possible. The paths are Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Each of these yoga is an independent path to God. But when end is attained, all three seems to join together in one. After participating this yoga, participating this yoga, one gets Brahma Nirvana, that is blissful Brahman. Karma Yoga is the path of disinterested service. In Gita, Karma Yoga refers to duties according to one's own station in life. Karma has twofold effects. It produces its allotted fruit and it also affects the character. According to Karma Yoga, the main concern of man is action and not its fruits. Man should act without any desire for fruit. This desireless action is Nishkama Karma. Nishkama Karma is the next slide, please. Nishkama Karma is the golden mean between the two ancient ideals of life, Nivritti and Pravritti. Nishkama Karma is a synthesizing spiritual pursuit of life through Nivritti Marga, that is path of contemplation, and Pravritti Marga, path of dynamic activity. According to this ideal of Nishkama Karma, man should lead a life of renunciation. Here, renunciation does not mean renunciation of action. Sannyasa does not mean renunciation of action, but renunciation of interest, renunciation of desire, and renunciation of attachment. Gita says man has to do his own duties to one's own station in life, and that is, you have to have a sotharma. While karma is the path of disinterested service, Jnana Yoga is the path of knowledge. It is a way of attaining communion with God through perfect knowledge. It is not mere intellectual knowledge or vijnana. It is direct intuitive experience of God. One who attains this path realizes that individual soul is identical with absolute self. You can remind of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, how the Sri Krishna showed his cosmic order, or cosmic order to Arjuna. Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion. Devotion is not mere lip worship. It is single-minded and unshakable love of God. The object of devotion is personal God. The true devotee dedicates everything at the feet of God, and God looks after his welfare. This love of God is If this love of God is supreme and every other love is an imperfect manifestation of this supreme love. Thus, when the barrier of the ego is removed by following the path of either of knowledge or of karma or of love or of meditation or of following all of them together will together together will lead to the presence of omnipresent, omniscient, immortal Lord of the universe in front of you. Now, let me move on to the concept of moksha or liberation in different systems of Indian philosophy. And I will discuss the concept of moksha in Charvaka. I will be beginning to discuss on the concept of moksha in Charvaka first. Charvaka. In Charvaka philosophy is a materialistic school in Indian, one of the materialist school in Indian philosophy. The concept of God, karma, soul, and immortality are mere fictions of they're fictitious, not imaginary one, fictions of the four values of life. Only karma is regarded as the end, and artha or wealth is regarded as the means to that end. Dharma and moksha are rejected. The only liberation according to Charvaka is the dissolution of the body. There is no survival after death. Let me move to Jainism now. The highest goal of man according to Jainism is to liberate soul from karma. Karma is the link, unites the soul with the body. Right faith, samyak darshana, right conduct, samyak charika, and right knowledge, samyak jnana, are the ways to attain moksha. These three together known as Triratna or Ratnatrayas of Jainism. Right conduct is making one's life by conforming to the truth. A person who has right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct get rid of his impurities and gain moksha. Right faith in the Jain scriptures may come to one naturally or through the instruction of a teacher. Right knowledge is the only proper understanding of the nature of the categories, which is free from delusion and doubt. Right conduct becomes possible when one has right faith and right knowledge. The conduct which seeks to observe are called the 5 vows that indicates his general character. These vows in the extreme forms are meant for the ascetics. They are known as Mahavritas or great vows of Jainism. The great vows are Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Abhigriha, and Brahmacharya. Ahimsa or non-injury complies not only with drawing one's own self from to others, but also doing positive services to all human beings. One should not injure anybody by thought or word or act. Satya is a virtue which should be understood in association with ahimsa. To be untruthful is the cause of injury. Asteya or non-stealing means not taking what is not given, that is by depriving another person of what belongs to him. One inflicts injury on him. So one should not covet another's property. Brahmacharya thus implies physical and moral self-control to the ascetics. This virtue means absolute celibacy. Abhigriha, the ascetic must not own anything. He should not consider even his body as his own. He should consider the entire world to be his own family. He owns everything but nothing. In the case of laymen, same observances are recommended except Abhigriha and Brahmacharya. And it has replaced to the vows of chastity and the principle of limiting one's own wants or contentment. They are known as anuvratas. For the layman, abhrigrha means reduction of his wants to the minimum possible. The practice of the five virtues paves the way for the liberation of the soul from the bondage of karma, as I mentioned earlier. The concept of karma in this doctrine is unique. Karma is regarded as a kind of subtle matter. The soul, when liberated from karma, regains its original omniscience and rests in peaceful bliss forever. The activities of the man who has attained this stage will be good and will be devoid of selfishness. This conception resembles Jivan Mukta. The liberated man, when freed himself from the body and death, becomes like God. He becomes like death and he becomes like God. Jainism explains sevenfold scheme for the process of liberation. They are Asrava, Benta, Sambara, Nirjara, Moksha, Jiva and Ajiva. The subtle practices of matter which flows into the soul and cause its bondage are called karma. In its intrinsic nature, the soul is pure and perfect. On account of the association with matter, it becomes finite. The passions conditions the products of karma, and this karma in turn conditions the passions. These are 7 kinds of karma, and those karma fills the space that is occupied by the souls. The process of release will be gained only when the soul is dissociated. At first, the influx of fresh karma is to be stopped, and sticking to the soul is to be removed. What results from is this is the liberation of the soul from the hold of karma. The influx of karma particle is asrava. The bondage caused by it is bantha. The stoppage of further flow of karma is samvara. The shedding of the karma is in stock is nirjara. The state of perfection that is reached is moksha. When this end is achieved, the age-old partnership between soul and matter is dissolved and soul finally becomes liberated. Let me move. This is a liberation in Jainism. Let me move on to Buddhism. Philosophically, the Buddhist nirvana is identical with moksha of the other systems of Indian philosophical tradition, which is the freedom from bondage to karma and ignorance and the attainment of the kingdom of heaven. Buddhism points out that life in this world is full of sufferings. But Buddhism is not pessimistic. It points out that suffering can be overcome and also prescribes paths leading to it. The Buddhism advocated 4 noble truths we already know about. I'm not going to discuss that. And let me, the Sarma Dukkham, Dukkha Karana, Dukkha Nirodha, and Dukkha Nirodha Marga. And let me start with Dukkha Nirodha Marga and proceed the concept of liberation in Buddhism. Right, as I said, right knowledge is the means of removing the evils of suffering. We are ignorant. We do not know the true nature of the self. But when we attain right knowledge, we realize the impermanency of ourself. In order to get right knowledge, an individual has to undergo moral disciplines. These disciplines are 8 in number and is called the Eightfold or Ashtanga Marga of Buddhism. They are right faith, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, or right thought, and right concentration. Let me next slide, please. The way of liberation or liberated state is next slide. The way of liberation, liberated state is nirvana. The term nirvana literally means blowing out or becoming cool or annihilation. It is described as a heaven of nothingness. It is the dissolution of 5 skandhas. It is the cessation of all activities. Nirvana is the state of annihilation of all selfish desire. The desire for worldly existence. Nirvana is a state of freedom from suffering. Nirvana can be attained by following Ashtanga Marga. Buddhistic view is not much different from Upanishadic view of moksha. Nirvana represents the conditions which result after the perfection is reached while yet the individual continues to live. This corresponds to the ideal of Jivan Bhukti of Upanishads. In the state of nirvana, passion and limited interest of common life have been rooted out, and the person lives a life of perfect peace and equanimity. Such a person who has attained nirvana is called an arhat. Let me move on to Nyaya Vaisheshika. Now we can look into the concept of liberation. We already have seen very beautifully Dr. Srikala Nair presented in Nyaya Vaisheshika's theory of knowledge. Let me, very briefly speak on, epistemology. On liberation. Now we can look into the concept of liberation in Nyaya Vaisheshika, as I said earlier. According to Nyaya Vaisheshika's system of philosophy, the ignorance which is the cause of bondage. She already stated what they say. And suffering and is not, ignorance which is a cause of bondage or suffering, and is not merely the lack of knowledge of self, but also false knowledge. This false knowledge can be eliminated by right knowledge. The goal of life, according to Nyaya Vaisheshika system, is termed as abhavarga, escape. It is a state beyond pain and pleasure. The evil is such a fact as good. We cannot have any one of them without the other. The self is subjected to both pain and pleasure in the samsara. In the state of moksha, the self transcends not merely pain and pleasure, but all its specific qualities such as thought, feeling, and willing. In the Nyaya system, the term moksha has a negative meaning because in the state moksha, the soul has neither pain nor pleasure. It is a state of absolute freedom from all evils of life and existence. Evil is due to association of self with the manas and body. This is the cause of bondage of body. The physical body gets destroyed at death, but because the effects of karma, it will be replaced by another when the self is born again. The manas, on the other hand, will remain the same throughout, and he will be in contact with the self. Liberation consists in realizing the faith through the self is related to both mind and body, and that relation is by no means necessary. As in other systems, right knowledge is the means of ignorance, is the cause of bondage. It is the root cause of samsara with its sorrow and feeling joys. But cause of conduct is not like disinterested activity or nishkama karma of in Bhagavad Gita, but through the practice of yama and niyama. The discipline consists of 3 steps. The first step is the cultivation of spirit of detachment, vairagya, and it is essentially selfish desires and impulses. The second step is acquisition of knowledge or jnana. This is mainly intellectual path. It is the acquisition of knowledge of the ultimate truth through formal study and reflection. It is the realization that self is not actually related to body and manas, The third and final step consists in meditation or yoga on ultimate truth, which results in the direct experience of the ultimate reality. And let me move on to Sankhya. The ideal of life art, due to Sankhya's life art, in Sankhya system, the ideal of life ideal life is the attainment of kaivalya or aloofness from prakriti and all the transformation or evolution. It is also termed Abhavarga because self in the Kaivalya escapes from the realm of suffering, but no positive associated with it. The self not only has no pain or pleasure, it is also without knowledge because it has no buddhi and its accessories. The immediate cause of aloofness is viveka. Viveka removes the cause of bondage. Ignorance or ajnana is the cause of suffering. It is not wrong knowledge, but it is incomplete knowledge. The Sankhya is silent regarding the means of attaining liberation. The yoga system is mainly concerned with liberation. To make the teaching of yoga fruitful, one must be convinced of escape. One must be convinced of abhavarga or aloofness of Purusha from Prakriti. The empirical self is a blend of Purusha and Prakriti. Man finds himself in association with body and manas, which are the products of Prakriti. When spirit realizes its aloofness from Prakriti, it becomes completely free from all types of sorrow. There is no positive pleasure in the state of moksha, but there is undisturbable peace for the spirit, which has regained its nature as pure consciousness. Let me move on to yoga. Unlike Upanishads, yoga here, the yoga system, the yoga means separation. That is the separation of Purusha from the bondage of Prakriti. The separation is achieved by a process of mind control. The discipline consists of 8 limbs, that they are Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, self-restraint; Niyama, observances; Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dhyana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the 8 limbs. These are together known as 8 limbs of yoga. The first 2 steps, Yama and Niyama, constitute the moral preparation for the spiritual discipline. Your Yama is negative virtue. It consists of 5 principles. They are as follows. That is Ahimsa, Asteya, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Abrigraha, Brahmacharya, and Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Abrigraha, and Brahmacharya. These are described as the great vows or Mahabharatas. The second step, Niyama, is a positive virtue. It also consists of 5 steps. They are Sandosha, Sauja, Sandosha, Tabas, Sayathyaya, and Ishvara Pranithana. These 5 positive and negative principles are together described as 10 commandments of Sankhya Yoga. Through them, the moral foundation of yogic discipline is laid. A possibility of seeing foundation, there can be whole truth or attaining final freedom or kaivalya. Asana, pranayama, and pratyahara are the preliminary step of yoga. They help to control the physical body. The last 3, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, make up yoga proper. They help to get direct mastery over mind. When one reaches samadhi, one loses oneself in meditation. The connection with the outer world is broken and we become one with the object of meditation. It is in this stage that the spirit is lifted above the world process. In samadhi, there are 2 stages. They are samprajnana samadhi and asamprajnana samadhi. The samprajnana samadhi is the lowest stage, that is a conscious samadhi. In this stage, the individual is conscious of the object of meditation. He realized that Purusha is aloof from Prakriti and is aware of his aloofness. The highest stage is the asamprajnana samadhi. That is this stage described as a stage of sleepless sleep, that is turiya. In this stage, the individual is not conscious of the world and his own existence. Purusha shines forth in this stage liberated. All operations of internal organ are suspended. The spirit realizes its virtue in its true nature. This discipline then becomes Jivan Mukta. Nothing binds him after Prakriti may evolves but does not affect. He will then remain free from passion, pain, and guilt. Let me move on to Purva Mimamsa. The Purva Mimamsa system does not recognize liberation, but their conception of dharma is very important. According to the changes takes place in the world, due to the operations of dharma and adharma. Dharma stands for religious duties. The moral purity of the individual is considered to be necessary condition for performing Vedic rituals. Dharma is considered to yield the results immediately and not directly. There are 4 positive and negative commands in the Veda. The positive command is called Vidhi and the negative command is called Nisheda. The positive commands are Nitya Karma, Nainitya Karma, and Kama Karma. I'm stop here now. I'm not going to have a detail of all these things. And let me move to Shankara. According to Advaita of Shankara, the moksha is the goal of human life. Moksha is not the state to be attained, but it is the very nature of individual self. According to him, the individual self is Brahman itself. But the distinction is due to illusory adjunct mind-body complex with which it identifies itself. Man's ultimate aim in life should be to realize this truth. Empirical life is a consequence of adhyasa, which is caused by ajnana. Ajnana is to be removed through its contrary jnana. The jnana that is capable of removing. Avidya is intuitive realization of one's own identity with Brahman. As in other systems, the attainment of God here also means bringing about, but the change is not the level of being, but in the level of thought. Neither moral perfection nor religious acts are required as a direct means to moksha. They are only aid to jnana. They are necessary but not enough. When jnana arises, it dispels ajnana, and simultaneous revelation of spirit in all its splendor is moksha. The next slide, please. This discipline consists of 2 parts as common to other systems, that is vairagya, cultivation of detachment, and jnana, acquisition of knowledge. First part of discipline signifies adherence to duty as taught in Veda. It is performance of duty which no desire for its fruits, but with a view of perfecting character. We can realize the truth only by continuous performance of duty in the spirit of disinterestedness. These empirical activities will help a person to rise above the egoistic attitude and make him to fit for realization. Hence, karma is conceived not as the cause of moksha, but as the cause of true desire to know. Morality is thus described as the predicate cause of moksha. Success in this part of this discipline is indicated by the 4-fold traits, that is sadhana chatushtaya. They are ability to discriminate between eternal and non-eternal. Absence of desire for desiring pleasure or avoiding pain here or elsewhere. Attainment of calmness, temperance, the spirit of renunciation, fortitude, power of concentration of mind, faith, or the will to believe, and desire for true freedom. Freedom are these, 4-fold traits. This part of discipline qualifies one for sannyasa. The second part of the discipline are 3-fold, as in the Upanishads, that is Shravana. It signifies learning from a proper guru, that Brahman is the sole reality. It signifies the thing. One is that the ultimate truth is to be learned through the study of revealed text. The second is that the second part is the manana is the second is that they emphasize the need for the personal discussion with the competent teacher. The Upanishad doctrine Tattvamasi is given prominence in the teaching. As a result of Stravana, the discipline comes to know about the soul of the individual and ultimate reality, the reflection within himself, and helps him to have a conviction of correctness of this truth by removing doubt. The value of analytical reflection is that it leads to mystic experience. Nidhityasana, Manana secures intellectual conviction. Nidhityasana is the meditation upon the identity between the individual self and Brahman. It should be continued till intuitive knowledge arises and that identity becomes immediate, then one becomes a Jivan Mukta. The Jivan Mukta's life has two stages, Samadhi or mystic trance, when he turns inward and loses himself in Brahman. Reversion to common life, then he is not deluded from spectacle of the world because he has reached once for all its metaphysical falsity. The religious rituals and the common laws of social morality becomes meaningless for him. He becomes spontaneously virtuous. Life becomes a second nature with him. He becomes selfless service, which will be the nature of experience of the Vedantin. When a Jivan Mukta casts off the physical body at death, he becomes a Videha Mukta. Advaita also recognizes Karma Mukti or progressive realization. Let me move on to Visishta Advaita. According to Visishta Advaita of Ramanuja, the ideal is the attainment of the world of Narayana and enjoyment of perfect freedom and bliss there. The means to attain this goal is of two kinds, that is Prabhati and Bhakti. Prabhati is the absolute self-surrender. It represents a certain mental attitude and explained as a form of jnana. Bhakti involves a course of training in three stages. Again, they are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Karma Yoga stands for doing the duties of one's station in life in the spirit of the teaching of the Gita. One of the two motives recognized in Gita are Atma Shuddhi and Ishvara Seva. This system gives importance to Ishvara Seva. The word karma is used in wider sense to include Vedic rituals, idol worship, and prayer as taught in Agamas. Jnana Yoga, it is meditating upon the self after knowing its true character through Stravana. Those who have achieved success in Karma Yoga can enter upon it. The underlying idea of explaining Jnana Yoga is that self-realization is not by itself, by the goal of man as in Advaita, but only precondition to it, that is God realization, as I said. Bhakti Yoga, this is the final step which he presupposes recent conviction regarding the nature of God. Those who can pursue Jnana Yoga alone can begin it. Bhakti Yoga here is equated with jnana. Bhakti is not mere concentration of mind on reality, but a loving contemplation of personal God. It also implies the feeling of one's absolute dependence upon God as the sole power in the universe. It also consists of meditation. Here, meditation is suffered with feeling of love and dependence. Meditation results in divine vision. This is moksha. This highest state can be attained only after the soul is released from the body at the time of death. That is, Visishta Advaita believes only in Videha Mukti and does not recognize Jivan Mukti, as in the Advaita of Shankara. Jnana is the direct cause of moksha and karma is the only accessory aid. Next slide. Moksha is conceived as freedom from mundane existence over and above it. It is the idea reaching a supramundane sphere and enjoying in the presence of God, the highest bliss. It is reaching Vishnu Loka, Vaikunta. It is the ideal of world constituted of Suttha Sattva. It is a place of absolute peace and perfection. When a bound soul is liberated, it is led to this region. Vishishtadvaita also recognizes another pathway to God, irrespective of caste or rank. This is irrespective of caste or rank. This is called prabhati, through prabhati. It means that salvation is to be obtained through free grace. It is described as sarangati, or flinging oneself on God's compassion. It consists of absolute self-surrender and signifies a resolve to follow the will of God and to seek help from Him alone. Ramanuja attaches so much importance to prabhati that he makes it essential to bhakti also in final stages. Let me move on to Dvaita. Dvaita system is final, according to Dvaita system, in Dvaita system, final goal is moksha. Moksha means fellowship with God and not identification with the absolute. The liberated soul is not similar to God as in Ramanuja emphasizes. The liberated soul is different from God in the state of moksha. The bliss and knowledge of liberated soul is finite as compared with the bliss and knowledge of God. The bliss enjoyed by the liberated soul is fourfold, that is Salohyas. The liberated soul resides in the same place with God. Samipya, the liberated soul resides near to the God. Sarupya, the soul possesses external forms like that of God. Sayujya, the soul enters into the body of God and shares partially the bliss with Him. According to Mathva, there is an ignorance in the source of samsara. Ignorance obscures man not only from true nature of God, but also the nature of man himself. One can overcome these two stages through moksha. Man attain the correct knowledge of his own self by the study of scriptures. This mediate knowledge becomes immediate. Mediate knowledge becomes immediate when final liberation is achieved through God's grace. The knowledge of God as the author of the universe and Lord of all is more essential for moksha. The individual self realizes intrinsic nature, bliss in the state of moksha. But the final means of reaching the final goal is unbroken love of God or devotion, which springs from a realization of His greatness and goodness. Thus, Karma Yoga is emphasized. A course of discipline consists of the study, Sravana of the scriptures, Manana and Dhyana with the paths in the Upanishads is also necessary for attainment of moksha. Mathva respects the ideal of Jivan Mukti. Let me conclude little bit of analysis of this and conclude my presentation. This, more or less, it is a descriptive approach I used in this presentation. Let me have a conclude my presentation. And this, we can see that there are two elements common to all Indian thought except Charvaka. The pursuit of moksha has the final goal, an ascetic spirit and of discipline recommended for its attainment. Moksha is not an otherworldly ideal alone, always. The concept of Jivan Mukta shows that moksha can be attained in this life itself. But it is not very easy to reach the ideal. And man's life is a continuous progress towards perfection within the limits of present life. Enlightenment transforms one's outlook on life and the problems of the world and assume a new significance of asceticism and spirituality. Therefore, I think spiritual is not always religious. as mentioned in all systems, or ethical or moral mentioned in all systems. It is social and political too. Depends on how one inculcates such values and methods to translate values and methods to translate it, how one inculcates such values and methods and translate it into different domain in an appropriate manner. And when I'm in Chennai, without mentioning Tirukural, it is not describing moksha and without mentioning Tirukural. I think this is through the help of my student, PG student Harigaran, sent me some couplets from Tirukural, which is talking about somewhat. I think so. Experts are there, can help me out whether it is right or no. We can help me out as well. Piravi Perungadal Neenduvar, Neendar Iraivan Adiseratar. The meaning is they swim the sea of births, the god food who gain. Meaning, none can swim the great sea of births, but those who were united to the feet of God. Let me conclude by my own, again, reflection on moksha. When a drop falls in the ocean, we think it disappears, as though its whole existence were the surface tension that made it a separate thing. But if the essence of drop is water itself, then the drop is, for example here, Atman is equal to Brahman. The essence of drop is water itself. Then the drop is not lost, but transformed into the whole ocean. India has never confused the filling with the water. Life is like fire. It is lived by burning and consuming. Death is not in front of us in Western tradition. Death is behind me. The West, on the other hand, from Plato to Heidegger, has conceived philosophy as a preparation for death. In Heidegger's phrase, being unto death, this is a conceptual dead end to the great speculation on death. Considering this inclination of Western thought, it seems common sense to see death before us, to view our lives as a preparation for a good death. We are so used to thinking our lives as signs some thought that we have become comfortable with the fear of dying. Therefore, but in India, it is not. It is as I mentioned earlier, the drop is not lost, but transformed into the whole ocean. Therefore, this identical. You are attaining, transforming oneself to other. Transforming your existence to one to other. And it can be, another thing, it can be, you can translate it into, as I mentioned earlier, political and social as well. As I said, it's not necessarily a political one. And, inculcate all these values to the better and social systems, we will be left in a great, society. Thank you.
Prasanna, unmute. Prasanna, unmute.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry for that. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful exposition. it was precise and brief. I'm very sure that it will very well fit into the subject matter, which can be absorbed by the students of philosophy, especially the degree students. Thank you so much for taking up this venture of attempting something which has to be delivered to the degree students. Thank you so much for that.
So
Now,
it's an adventure to investigate something in Indian philosophy that I prefer in Western philosophy. As there are lots of experts. I think I just wanted to have a floor is open for discussion. I think.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Even in spite of your busy schedule and all the problems related to Corona and the shifting and all, you have agreed to be part of our seminar. Thank you so much for that. Now, I think we will have 2-3 responses or questions. We will take up 2-3 responses or questions. If anybody wants to have a response or questions, they can directly unmute the mic and ask the question directly to me.
Just an observation, Prasanna.
Okay.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon, Shabi.
Refreshed and ready for handling the classes for the coming academic year. Thank you. Absolutely precise, point blank to the students, was like attending a refresher course. Ready for the online classes. I hope this is recorded and I can just play this to the students. Very, 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 very precise, clear, and pointed to the students. Thank you, madam.
Prasanna, there are a couple of questions in chat box. Why don't you read it for? Why don't you read it for madam?
Yeah, the Shaiva Siddhanta also contributed on Moksha in Tamil. That's Dr. Sudesh Kumar asked the question. No, I don't know whether it's a question or a comment. Shaiva Siddhanta also contributed on Moksha in Tamil philosophy as an independent ground, also political and social way. Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, there's no. Thank you, ma'am. It's interesting and enlightening listen. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, there's no chat box. There is no question.
Okay.
Let me look at.
Yeah, we don't have any other questions in the chat box. So maybe we'll take up some comments or questions from the participants.
Okay, that is so.
Professor Shena, if you want to ask a question, you can directly ask the question.
I need more comments, and if I can get, when I will be thankful. I think this is the first presentation on Indian philosophy.
Great, madam. Great. And
I'm Vyas from Delhi. I'm a philosopher by discipline. I'm engineer.
Okay.
I have read Yoga Vasishtha. It mentions 7 yoga bhumikas, Shravan, Manan, Nididhyasan, and in Nididhyasan, it specifically states that the one who is in the stage of Nididhyasan can call himself as an Arya. He is the one who sets example for others to follow, leading the life of knowledge, etc., etc., etc. That is the Jagrat Avastha as per Yoga Vasishtha. Then comes that is the 4th stage after Nididhyasana, and then we have 6, 7. 7th is called Turiya Tita. You have mentioned only about Turiya. Why have you not considered Yoga Vasishtha's viewpoint, madam?
You are absolutely right, but I haven't, it may not be a right to say that I didn't get time to do that. That's time is, I have, given this much of time, and also I didn't get the time to go more deeply into, and I have to cover entire concept of moksha in entire systems. Therefore, I don't, go very deeply into that. That's the one reason. I'm sorry for that.
In Yoga Vasishtha, It is the seventh state that is achieved in Turiyatita state of consciousness. That is the seventh Yoga Bhumika. It is there that you achieve moksha. Thereafter, you don't have to take the life. That is what is mentioned, I believe, even in Gita. That only after reaching the Brahmadham, one will not have to take the birth. That is moksha. So I find different definitions of moksha. I mean, as a student of philosophy, it is interesting to me.
I don't understand the question. Is it a question or I didn't understand?
No, what I'm saying is there are different definitions of moksha given in the different various systems that you presented.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, how does a beginner understand what is really the moksha? Or all the 4 or 5 systems talk of moksha in different ways?
The cycle of, sir, death, freedom from the cycle of death and birth.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your question and comment. Is there any other person who wants to? Pani sir, would you like to comment?
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Sunitha, for a wonderful presentation. 2 observations I would like to make. One is we have to take into account some of the contemporary philosophers' concern or their approach towards moksha. Professor like Dayakrishna would say that this is not, that is, moksha is not the exclusive concern of Indian philosophy. In fact, while talking about 3 myths of Indian philosophy, the first myth of Indian philosophy is spirituality. While discussing that, he argues that it is not the main concern of or exclusive concern of Indian philosophy. And further, he says that there is no commonality with regard to the definition of moksha. Just now, Vyas sir has pointed out that one. And also, Dayakrishna says the discussion on moksha in some of the systems of Indian philosophy is very minimal. So my concern here is why we should talk about moksha as one of the important aspects of Indian philosophy, because whenever we talk about Indian philosophy, 2 concepts predominate. One is moksha and other is karma. But I have a strong feeling that these 2 concepts have done a lot of damage to the method of doing Indian philosophy. This is my observation. And secondly, I would like to point out that the question whether moksha is immanent or transcendent. Of course, you said that moksha could be attained in this life itself, quoting Jivan Mukta. But we have to understand many of the contemporary thinkers. The other day I was speaking about them, Dayakrishna, then R. Balasubramanian, then K.J. Shah, and many others, Sundararajan, many others, Rajendra Prasad. All these philosophers have pointed out that moksha is not a transcendental value, because while talking about purusharthas, we consider it as moksha as a parama purushartha, and it is something transcendental, and most of the systems agree that it should be reached or it should be attained only after the death. So the question whether moksha is immanent or transcendent is the main discussion in contemporary Indian philosophy. So while talking about moksha, we have to take into account the concern of the contemporary Indian philosophy. We think that is the best method of doing philosophy. And my second observation is that you made a reference to Tirukkural. What I would like to point out is Tirukkural actually does not speak about moksha. it speaks about the only three values. As you know, it talks about aram, porul, inbam, which means dharma, artha, kama. So the fourth value is not at all discussed as fourth value as moksha is not at all discussed in Tirukkural. And in fact, this is the view maintained by many of the Tamil scholars, especially if you look at Tamil literature, you can find out that at least in the initial stages, there was no concept of moksha for us. Tamilians were more concerned about the three values which are directly connected to the empirical world. So I think that moksha, from this one can say moksha is nothing but the later addition. This is a view maintained by many scholars of the contemporary period. I would like you to consider all these aspects when you are saying something about moksha. Of course, you made a good attempt. I congratulate you. But let us add some of the contemporary philosophers' view also, so that your approach would be more meaningful. This is what I would like to say. But I congratulate you for a very nice presentation. Sunitha.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for the comments. And as you mentioned, moksha can be understood through the contemporary lens. I do agree with you. Again, when you are talking about the Jaya Krishna's interpretation of moksha in Jaya Krishna's philosophy, that's one. I think there's one interpretation of Indian philosophy. When you are looking in the different lens, in the philosophical tradition through different lens. I have mentioned only a conventional approach I adopted. I already mentioned. I haven't, for the student's perspective, I have just mentioned only which is descriptive manner. I explained to different concept of moksha and different schools and systems of philosophy. I completely agree with you, sir. This is that intervention and interaction and dialogue between the contemporary Indian philosophy is necessary for the day. I concluded by saying that religious spirituality or adhering asceticism is not always religious in nature. It is social and political as well. This is what I concluded. I don't want to. I haven't done any serious study on that, but I just concluded that. And I have done a study on spirituality earlier with pragmatic spirituality with Anand Giri in the singer. And as you said, the commonalities when you are discussing about. Another one, you mentioned this, you have to even the meaning, the of moksha and the other thing of moksha. But I may look at it in different ways, sir. But even when you are looking at the, I'm not looking the moksha in the transcendental level. Even that conceptual level of moksha can be translated to our day-to-day life, because the moralities they are talking about, saucha, santosha, ahimsa, satya, asteya, the place, the kind of country we are not able to live peacefully, and when you practice, I'm not talking about the spiritual one, but I'm talking about the moral one. When you are doing it, there can be a better society. I think that you have to inculcate such a wonderful values from our tradition. Please try to translate it into our day-to-day life for the present contemporary society. It can be, the world will be a wonderful one. This is what my approach is. It's not. I'm not talking about the religious, the particular, transcendental nature, but even conceptual-wise, the moksha itself. Moksha, I'm not, even the word meaning, renunciation or indignation or whatever it may be, but you are talking about the political liberation, social liberation, enlightenment, you can. What is this? This is because of the lack of our commitment to the sincerity to the society. I think this can be translated into our, present day life. This is what the Jivan Mukta, I'm not taking religiously at all. I wanted to translate that into our, on every man's life. When we are good, we are acting, performing good actions in the society, you can, it can be a wonderful, holistic and harmonious society we can develop. This is what my approach is. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shah, for your question and your response to it, ma'am. Is there any other questions? Sumit?
Yeah, it's not a question. Hi, Sunitha ma'am. Really, it's a nice, wonderful presentation. You quote in Tamil Tirukkural. It's nice to hear your voice. It's really good. I wish it is great attempt. It's nice, ma'am. I would like to say, it's nice.
And also, I wanted to know, sir said it is not applicable to Tirukkural, is not, the moksha is not Tirukkural, they don't accept moksha as a concept. But Pani sir said, what do you mean by this then? I wanted to have those who are Tamil speaking and scholars can explain to me what none can stem the great sea of birds, but those who are united to the feet of God. What is the
What
meaning?
is that, ma'am? Tell me.
That is not Peringadal Neenduvar. Neendar Iraivan Adisera. What is the meaning?
It means that worship about the God like that. I think so. It's not means that you will be attain the moksha. It's not like that. Worship. How to worship like that? If you read the full Tirukkural, I can understand. In Tamil, you can read it, ma'am.
Excuse
Even
me.
Pani sir is a great
Sunitha,
be delivering.
Sunitha, hello, Sunitha.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The first chapter in Tirukkural is known as Kadavul Varthu, that is devotion to God. There are two ways of understanding. There is a view that this devotion of God chapter, which contains 10 couplets, is an interpolation. That's one thing. But we need not bother about that. Since the text contains it, let us have it. But all the couplets talk about the God, the existence of God, how he could be reached and all that one. But that doesn't, as Sumitra very correctly said, that does not imply that there is moksha. There are two different concepts. Now, the very idea of talking about Arampurul Inbam, that is Dharma, Artha, Kama, is to show that if one practices all these three Purusharthas, that itself is enough. There is separately, one need not have what is known as a moksha or liberation. Okay, because in each and every stage of life, there is something which a human being could attain. So why should we have a separate chapter on moksha? That is a main concern of the Tamils. At least till 8th or 9th century, in Tamil literature, we don't find the concept of moksha. This was later addition, of course, we adopted it, like as we adopted the caste system in Indian, Tamil tradition. It was later addition. It was not there. Neither caste system nor the concept of moksha is available in Tamil tradition in the initial period. Okay.
Hari, I think.
Yes. May I intervene here? Yes, I'm Hariharan from Department of Philosophy, Madras Christian College. Yes, I like to give few points about this issue, like saying that moksha is not much spoke in Tirukkural. So there is no word moksha in Tamil languages. We call it as a mukti. So what here, especially here in this Tirukkural says, is that it goes like this: Piravi Peringadal Neenduvar Neendar Ireivanadi Serada. பிறவி எனும் பெருங்கடலை யார் நீந்த முடியும் அப்படின்னா இறைவன் திருவடிகளை சேர்ந்தவங்க தான் நீந்த முடியும். யாரு நீந்த முடியாது அப்படின்னா இறைவன் திருவடிகளை சேராதார் நீந்த முடியாது அப்படிங்கிறார் திருவள்ளுவர். சரி, யார் இந்த இறைவன் அப்படின்னா இன்னொரு நிலை இருக்கு. பற்றுக பற்றற்றான் பற்றினை அப்பற்றை பற்றுக பற்று எடர். இறைவனானவன் பற்றற்றவன். அந்த பற்றற்ற ஜீவனை எப்ப பிடிச்சுக்கிறோமோ அப்ப இந்த பற்று விலகி போயிடுங்கிறார். முக்திங்கிற சொல்லு பயன்படுத்துற ஒழிய, ஆனா முக்தியை பற்றி பெருமளவு தமிழ் இலக்கியங்கள்ல பேசப்பட்டிருக்கு. திருநாவுக்கரசருடைய பாடல்களை எடுத்துட்டாலும் சரி, மாணிக்க வாசகருடைய பாடல்களை எடுத்துட்டாலும் சரி, இந்த முக்தி அப்படிங்கிற விஷயம் பேசப்பட்டிருக்கு. நம்ம ஒரு ஒரு குறிப்பு வந்து நம்ம கமெண்ட்ல கூட வந்திருந்தது. சைவ சித்தாந்தத்துல முக்தி பத்தின விஷயங்கள் பேசப்பட்டிருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறது. ஒரு 2 பாடல்களை வந்து உதாரணத்துக்கு சொல்லணும் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஒண்ணு வந்து பட்டினத்தாருடைய பாடல். பாடல் இப்படி போகுது. மாதா உடல் சலித்தால் வல்வினையேன் கால் சலித்தேன் வேதாவும் கை சலித்து விட்டானே நாதா இருப்பையூர் வாழ் சிவனே இன்னும் ஓர் அன்னை கருப்பையூர் வாராமல் காடு. இத்தனை பிறவிகள் எடுத்து எடுத்து இத்தனை பிறவிகளையும் எனக்கான இது அந்த டெலிவரி கொடுத்து மாதாவோட உடல் என்னுடைய அம்மாவோட உடல் சலிச்சு போச்சு அப்படிங்கிறார். மாதா உடல் சலித்தால் வல்வினையேன் கால் சலித்தேன். இத்தனை பிறவிகளையும் நடந்து நடந்து என்னுடைய கால்லாம் சலிச்சு போச்சு அப்படிங்கிறார் பட்டினத்தார். மாதா உடல் சலித்தால் வல்வினையேன் கால் சலித்தேன் வேதாவும் கை சலித்து விட்டான். இத்தனை பிறவிகளையும் எனக்கான கணக்கை எழுதின அந்த வேதனை அந்த 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 தலைவனுடைய கை கூட சலிச்சு போச்சு. நாதா இருப்பையூர் வாழ் சிவனே இன்னும் ஒரு அன்னை கருப்பையூர் வாராமல் என்ன இன்னொரு அம்மாவோட வயிற்றுல பிறக்க வச்சிடாது அப்படிங்கிறாரு. that came out of too much of suffering. இன்னொரு பாடல் நம்ம மோக்ஷா முக்திங்கிற விஷயத்தை பத்தி பேசிட்டு இருக்கோம். இது என்ன இது மோக்ஷா அப்படின்னா லைக் நம்ம சுனிதா மேம்ஸ் லெக்சர் வாஸ் ரியலி குட், பட் what was missing is one word that we call this as consciousness or awareness, which is immanent in nature, and it is always there, but which is not realized. The point which we realize is called moksha. The awareness, what this awareness is exactly, like we can put it to other words. That's why we say Brahman is indescribable. Brahman is consciousness. That consciousness is indescribable. So how to describe it in other words? Like we can say Satchidananda Rupam. That's why they said it that much clear. Satchidananda Rupam. That bliss, the truth, that is consciousness. I'm not the mind. I'm not the intellect. I'm not the feelings. I'm not the experience. I'm not the expressions. I'm not the form. I'm Satchidananda Rupam. Okay. What exactly that I am? So to put into other words, we can say that there is no difference between the known and the knower. There is no difference between the observer and the observed. There is no difference between the perceiver and the perceived. We have to make all these words together to describe the indescribable. At last, we will find that thing is always indescribable. That's why we have other saying in Vedic philosophy, that is Maunam Brahmahasmi. At the end, we sit with that silence. That silence is itself is us. So one more song from Sivavakya Siddhar to explain the same mukti. He uses same word again and again to explain this concept particularly. The song goes like this. என்னுள்ளே இருந்த ஒன்றை யான் அறிந்ததில்லையே, என்னுள்ளே இருந்த ஒன்றை யான் அறிந்தது, எனக்குள்ள இருந்த ஒன்றை எனக்கு தெரியாம இருந்திருக்கு. என்னுள்ளே இருந்த ஒன்றை யான் அறிந்து கொண்ட பின், எனக்குள்ள இருந்த ஒன்றை எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சதுக்கு அப்புறம் என்னுள்ளே இருந்த ஒன்று யாவருக்கான வல்லரோ. எனக்குள்ள இருந்தது யாரால பார்க்க முடியும் சொல்லுங்க? என்னுள்ளே இருந்து யான் இருந்து கொண்டிருக்கேன், எனக்குள்ள தெரியும். The one who is raised that only knows that what it is. It cannot be explained, it cannot be described. Only the concept, only the words can be expressed. Beyond that, it's something which have to be realized. That's why we call this as a realization. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pannisalam, for this excellent discussion to bring out. Thank you, ma'am. That's really excellent.
Thank you, Hari.
Thank you, Mr. Haran, for adding to that discussion. And I think this is this discussion itself have a huge scope for a seminar or webinar itself, and I think we will reserve those discussions for another seminar or webinar. I think because we are running out of our scheduled time, I think we will go forward for our formal vote of thanks. Pani sir, if you want to respond to that, or shall we go? You're mute, sir. You're mute.
Let's take half a minute only. Thank you, Haran. But you see,
thank you, sir.
You see, you are making reference to Jnana Sambandha and others, and then later you have reference to Siddhars and all. See, in initial period, that is in Tolkapian period or in Sangam period, this concept of moksha is not at all there. These are, of course, whether they are very much essential or not, that is a different issue altogether. I have a different opinion on that. But these are all later additions. Tamil's life does not contain the concept of moksha yet at the initial period or in the Sangam period. But this was later added due to the influence of some other philosophy which has come from North, or I don't know about that. But all these references that are available, which you have given, are nothing but that they would strengthen the concept of moksha, which are added later. That itself is a proof that they were all later added in Indian, in Tamil tradition. And secondly, I would like to state all that consciousness and all. See, you have to understand philosophy in its own sense. Consciousness does not cannot be equated with the moksha. See, one can say, for example, Turiya is all that are not correct, because whenever you talk about philosophy, try to understand the concept in its correct way, because the distinction which you made, that freedom, for example, as Sunitha said, consciousness, freedom can be defined in terms of moksha or vice versa. But what freedom you are talking about, that is the issue here. So whenever we talk about philosophy, we cannot, I feel that we cannot use words in a very loose way by saying that this is consciousness and consciousness is something equated to moksha and all that one, because one has to be very, very rigid in using words, especially in the philosophical framework. But I appreciate your approach. Let us have discussion whenever there is time in future.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for all the discussion. And especially, I would like to mention here that when we requested Dr. Sunitha ma'am to deliver the lecture, we have requested her that this has to be a periphery approach towards moksha, and this should give a class-like effect to the students. It is specifically for the benefit of the students. So this was our intention. So I think she has done justice to it. And we were not expecting a research paper. This was what we were expecting, and I think she has done a wonderful job. Thank you so much for ma'am doing. It's like coming down and lecturing is difficult. I know that. Thank you so much for that. And I'm sure our department, Manikandan sir also and Sumitra also will agree with me that we will have more discussions on these subjects, and we'll have different platforms to discuss these kind of things, which comes up in this webinar series. So thank you so much for bringing up all these problems, and thank you once again. And now I request Professor Sumitra, my colleague, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Agurchand Manmull Jain College, to propose the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Sumitra.
Good afternoon to one and all. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this event to all the dignitaries assembled here. We take this golden opportunity to thank the respected chief guest of this event, Dr. Srikala Nair. Ma'am, she is not well, even though she was presented the lecture very interesting and excellent way. It shows your sincerity on philosophy, ma'am. Thank you so much. I would like to thank another chief guest, another energetic chief guest, Dr. Kumari Sunitha, who honored this function with her valuable presence and a lot of discussion. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Thank you so much. I would like to express our sincere thanks to Secretary Shantamul Nair and management members. We thank our beloved principal, Dr. N. Venkataramanan, for his enormous support and guidance to make this event. A sincere thanks to Vice Principal Dr. B. Magavit for being part of today's program. I express the most sincere thanks Dr. S. Manikandan, Head Department of Philosophy, for his tireless effort to make this lecture a grand success. My most gratitude to our Dr. Anantha Krishnan, Head Department of History, for being with us. I extend my gratitude to the respected all the heads of department, staff members of various departments of AM Jain College. I must mention all the deep sense of appreciation for the office superintendent, Mr. Ravichandran, and non-teaching staff for their immense support. A special thanks to our Pani sir and other dignitaries for being with us. I owe a special gratitude to all our chief invites who have come from different destinations for their support and cooperation. I also wish to express my gratitude to all the hardworking and dedicated Dr. S. Prasanna Kumar, the Master of Ceremony, and technical support for his constant working in all the time. Thank you, sir. Last but not least, we thank all the participants of today's program for making it a grand success. Thank you.